Hi, I'm Pat DePillo, the World Language Department Chair for grades 7 through 12 in the Falmouth Public Schools, and this is the fall edition of Ciao Falmouth. This is the program where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with world languages in this town. Today, I'm happy to welcome Rebecca Sandefer, who teaches French 1, 2, and 3 here at FHS. So that she can, explain her journey from, her parents were missionaries and she grew up in France, and she can tell us all about how she got from France to Falmouth, Massachusetts on Cape Cod. With me today is Rebecca Sandefer. She's a brand new French teacher at Falmouth High School. Whenever we have new teachers in the department, I invite them to come on this program so that the community and people in Falmouth can get, if they haven't met her already at Meet the Teacher Night, will get to know a little bit about who their children encounter every day in French 1, 2, and 3. So, Rebecca has a very interesting background. So I'm going to, I hope, walk us through how she got from France, where she grew up, to Falmouth, Massachusetts. So, welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you.
And by the way, she's an excellent French teacher, doing a fabulous job. Tell us about your experiences as a child growing up in France, and do you consider yourself a native speaker?
Well, I moved to France with my family when I was 5.
From
California.
Oh.
That's where they're from.
Okay.
That's where I was born. And it was a full immersion experience because I had no French knowledge previously. My parents did not know French either. They went to language school for their work and started working there. They brought our family to France, and they dropped me off at school, first day of school. I learned French just by listening and observing, watching, and probably copying and repeating my peers and connecting the dots. And the next thing I knew French better than my parents, and I went to French public school until high school. Do I consider myself a native speaker? Yes and no. I have a native accent, but I still think today, as an adult, I still think in English and I process in English, primarily because it was my first language in speaking at home as a 5-year-old and under. It was my first language to read and write. French was my first language to read and write, however. So perhaps if you'd asked me this question while I was a young person living in France, I probably would have said, yes, I'm a native speaker. But today, years later,
do you consider, on the proficiency scale, would you consider yourself in the superior range, the distinguished range?
Probably,
do you know?
Probably superior.
Yeah, I would say so after all that background.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not surprised that you learned and speak French better than your parents. Nothing against your parents. It's just that you began at a very young age when children absorb a
Right.
lot more language.
Right.
So that's probably why.
Right.
Okay. Next question. How did you get from France to somewhere? Was there another stopover, or did you come right to the United States?
I spent my high school years in Germany at an international boarding school. My father taught chemistry there, and my mom subbed. And that school was to prepare us kids for American college and university. So we brushed up on our English skills, and our writing skills, our math skills, our American history skills. And then I took the SATs, and then I applied to schools in the U.S. because the plan was always for us kids to continue our higher education in the U.S. because we're not French citizens, we're American citizens. And so the plan was always to go back to the U.S. somewhere.
Are your parents still in France, or are they back here in the United States?
They're back in the United States now. In California.
California.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you applied to college here in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
and where did you enroll?
I followed my older sister because America seemed very frightening to me at the time. I didn't know much about America. I didn't know my states, and I didn't know anybody. I mean, I had a few cousins, but I only saw them just every so often. So I followed my older sister, who went into education as well, and she chose her field because she had a very specific special education degree in mind. She taught the hearing impaired in an oral program. So there are only so many programs in the U.S. So she went to Michigan, and so I followed her 2 years later and enrolled in the same school.
Which is?
Which is Calvin College, now Calvin University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then, was there graduate school for you?
No.
Okay.
So right after I earned my degree, I applied for teaching positions right away, and I secured a position at a school in upstate New York. I applied everywhere, 13 different jobs all over the U.S. because to me, I didn't have roots in Michigan. My sister was married at that time. My parents were in California. I really could go anywhere. I just needed a job. I needed a teaching job. I wanted to get started right away. And so I landed a job at Christian Brothers Academy in upstate New York in Syracuse. And I was there for 3 years teaching French. And after that,
Well, wait a minute.
oh,
There's a very interesting story connected to upstate New York and Syracuse.
okay,
Rebecca's husband
right,
is the grandson
yes,
of a man who he and his wife owned a farm.
mm-hmm,
And our own science department head, Chris Brothers, lived and worked with them.
yeah, on their farm,
Yeah.
on their dairy farm.
Yes.
Yep.
So, how did you meet your husband? Did you meet him at that time that you were teaching up there?
No, we met
Oh.
in college.
Oh.
We met at Calvin. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
So we
that's
met-
why you went to Syracuse.
No, he actually went to France.
Oh.
You know, so he went to France after graduating
Oh.
because he wanted to work on his French. And he
Oh.
applied to this program that hires Americans to teach English to young elementary school children in French public schools
Okay.
for a year. And they paid him. It was through the Department of Education in France. The program still exists. And his French really took off after that year. So he was living with other single people in a shared house, and he went to 3 different schools, taught English to 9-year-olds, and improved his own French just by living there for a whole year.
And so then when he came back to Syracuse?
Yes, because I was there. Then we got married, and then he continued on with his education with a master's program. I continued as a French teacher. Then we
Where did you get your master's? At Syracuse?
No, he did.
Oh, he did.
Mhm,
Okay.
yeah. And then we moved to New Jersey to continue his higher education because he went to Princeton for his doctorate.
Okay.
I followed, of course, and I began teaching at a private boarding school called the Petty School. And it's a boarding and day school.
Now, is that I did some work for the National Board of Professional Teaching Standards in the summertime, and
Uh-huh.
they sent us to Lawrenceville, New Jersey.
Yes, that's our rival school.
Oh, okay.
That's one of our
But I
rival
remember
schools.
taking
Yep.
a little jaunt over to Princeton to look around.
Yep.
And so I have a sense of what that area looks like.
Mhm.
So, okay. So
Central
there
New
you-
Jersey.
There you are in New Jersey.
The Garden State.
Garden
yes.
State. Yep.
Yep.
And so,
So we spent about 6 years there.
okay.
When he completed his doctorate, at the time I was pregnant with our firstborn, and I gave birth to him. And then I said, I think I'm gonna stay at home and raise my son. So that's what we did. I stopped teaching at that time, and we moved to Massachusetts for his job.
In the fall.
Right, in the fall, well, in the summer.
Okay, so this
But-
past summer.
No. This was almost 7 years ago.
He's been teaching at Marion for 6 or 7 years?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I've been home with the kids.
Okay.
Right. So I've been home with the kids for now, this is my, 6 years. And this past summer I was feeling like perhaps it was time to get back into teaching. And so that's how I found this position.
Okay, so
Right.
now we have
A lot of movement.
Now we have the whole story. No, it's interesting. That's why I wanted you to, one of the reasons why I wanted you to explain your story, shall we say. What are your impressions of Falmouth High School or Falmouth in general or this part of, like, do you live in Marion? So you don't live on Cape Cod, but it's
No.
close enough. So
Yeah.
what do you just your thoughts?
Well, first I find it wonderful that I'm here because Falmouth, I didn't know about Falmouth High School, but I knew Falmouth and Woods Hole because one of our favorite things to do is to come on the weekends in the summer and the spring and fall, is to come to Falmouth, go to Maison Villette to partake of the delicious
Of course.
pastries there.
And we used to have crepe cod. Magali
Right.
Shabarbi, who is in the kitchen here, and her husband Jafir used to own crepe cod. It's unfortunate that it didn't last, and I swear it's because of the location. If it were closer to downtown,
Maybe.
if it were in Mashpee Commons, somewhere other than where it was,
Right.
I'm pretty sure, because it was a combination of French and Moroccan food.
Delicious.
Yeah.
I didn't know of it, so I'm not sure when it closed, but I never went.
A couple of
I
years,
never
it's
tried
not
there.
a couple of years ago or last year or sometime, but yeah.
Well, we would go and have our brunch,
Sure.
and then we would bike with the the kids' seat on the back, and we would bike to Woods Hole and back, and then we would play on the playground, and it was just great, fond memories. So now we can still do that, but now I know that there's also Falmouth High School. I love that there's language in the middle school. I love that because as a child I learned language at a very young age, and I learned it in an untraditional way compared to most learners of a second language. And so I find it fabulous that there's French and Spanish in the middle school here. I have found so far, only being here for 1 quarter already, that Falmouth is incredibly supportive of its students first and foremost, and also of its staff. You feel that right away and every day. You see it in programs that they offer, you feel it with the community, the teachers, the support, the administration. It's just there. So I love that.
Great.
Yeah.
And how are you enjoying your classes?
They're great too. I have periods 1, 2, 3, and I have levels 1, 2, 3, a little bit of everything. Small classes, good size classes, because there's opportunity to speak, to call on students, to have everyone participate, and that's important for a language class.
Absolutely.
Right.
Any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like the audience to know about, or anything else?
I have a story.
Oh.
I have a story about my husband.
Oh.
And I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. But I learned French, like I said, at a very young age. It was effortless for me.
Sure.
I don't even remember the process.
Sure.
So in a way, I sort of cheated. But I had the
No.
perks. It was such a benefit. My husband, on the other hand, he learned it as a 9th grader.
Okay.
And he was a terrible student. He was a terrible student. He did not care for French. It was difficult for him. Today, he has his doctorate in French. He could be a college professor. He has written a dissertation. It is very long. He's been published in many articles and journals. He's traveled to give talks. His French is superb. How did he get there? At first, he wasn't a great student, and it was hard for him. Learning language at 14, 15 is difficult. It's a much different path than learning it as a child. And he struggled. But he stuck with it. And for some reason, it clicked later on. It clicked in college. And so when I meet students who say, this is so hard, I don't get it, it's difficult, I just think of my husband, who had that same story, but for him, it clicked. In college, somehow, things started to work together, whether it was, different teachers, different experiences, simply time, more effort, and of course, what helped him, in high school, there was an exchange program that motivated him, where he spent 2 weeks in France, and a French student came and lived with him for 2 weeks. There was that exchange. And then when he continued in college, and after college, he did a semester abroad. He loved living and meeting French people and conversing and sort of just living there and using his French in a practical way. And then after college, he did that program. And there are others like it. So if students want to improve their French, if they need that extra push, there are programs out there that use summertime months and also post-college as an adult that exist out there that can really just help the language skills really take off and really click.
So in contrast to that, what made it so easy for you, do you think, other than you were very young and you're just absorbing like a sponge?
I think it's because it was everywhere. It was my life. The only English I ever heard was in my own home from my parents.
Yeah. No.
Everything else, my entire life was all in French. So
I studied. I didn't study. I was exposed to French in elementary school on TV when I was a child. So half hour a week. Now it's not what you experience, but the reason you select your life's work is it's something that you enjoy, you have a passion for, but it's also something that comes, relatively speaking, maybe easy for you, easier than other things. I have an ear for language. I can remember them and repeat them, especially if it's a native speaker, because then you're mimicking the accent. But and there are a lot of other pieces, that go along with that. My first language is Latin. That's very organized, and I am an organized person. And so, anyway, so I guess the bottom line is, when you said he was resilient, I'm thinking of, our vision of the graduate. I am a Clipper. You are really Mr. and Mrs. Clipper because you have applied it throughout.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. It was wonderful to have you here. I knew some of those stories and some of that background, but not all of it. I'm glad you filled in the blanks and connected the dots. And we really enjoy thoroughly having you here. And I'm sure the students are, enjoying their French classes also.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'd like to thank Rebecca Sandefer for being my guest today. It was very interesting hearing how she got from France to Massachusetts with, stops here and there along the way. So, as I said in the intro, this is our fall edition of Ciao Falmouth. Stay tuned for the next one. The next edition will be sometime in the winter. So, to everyone in Falmouth, I'd just like to say, Ciao Falmouth.